Welcome back to Realize Your Potential with Mike and Travis. We are extremely lucky to have Vice President at Bank of America, Ebony Gurndy, with us today. She's also the co-founder of Total Sanitizer. I'm going to take you through a quick career update on her, just so you can hear how impressive she is. By the way, she's my first cousin, so you know she gotta have game. You know what I mean? Because that's just how we roll. You know what I mean? So she went to Marquette in 1997, graduated in 2001. She played for the women's basketball team there, was a superstar, got it in on defense, defensive super amazing player of the year. And then she went ahead and got a job as a vice president at commercial banking at BMO Harris Bank. She then moved on to VP of commercial banking at Regions Bank. And then she got that tap from, big bank, what I like to call big bank BB, you know what I mean? JP Morgan Chase tapped her on the shoulder as VP of commercial banking there. And then she decided, I want to go out on my own, and decided to start her own consulting business for a while. And during that time period, also founded Total Sanitizer. At that time had a different name, but the foundation was laid there for Total Sanitizer, which is an alcohol-free skin sanitizer, one of the safest brands on the market. We buy it, we use it. It's fantastic, great for your skin. And another plug, for those of you that use that alcohol that dries out your skin, this does not. So if you're looking for a sanitizer that will really help you, I'm telling you, Total Sanitizer is there. Plug. Get it. Then, yeah, and then got that call to really go back to big bank. Really reached out to her, made her offer that she really couldn't refuse, and so she went back to Bank of America, which is, you guys have all heard of Bank of America, and she's a vice president of commercial banking there today. She was selected recently to be a part of the Returning Talent Workshop. As one of the top kind of employees in their competitive pool of candidates. And so really, really, really excited to have her as a guest to talk to you today about not only her success, but how things like strategy and planning have really helped her be successful. So Ebony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
Now, before we start with all the question asking, Mike, tell the people out there what they got to do.
Like, share, subscribe. Don't forget.
All the social media platforms. Leave us a comment on our LinkedIn, or our Facebook, or our Twitter, or our Instagram. Just leave something, be a part of the conversation. We really love it. And thank you for supporting the show. It's been really exciting for us. So as we jump in here, Ebony, I kind of ran down a quick idea of who you are and what you've done, but can you give a little more breadth and light to that and tell the people out there a little bit about your career and how you kind of took each step and got from one step to another?
That was definitely very quick. I wish I could do it that succinctly. You reminded me of a few things. So oddly enough, yes, you're right. I did start my career in banking. When I first graduated from college, I actually wanted to go to law school. So my plan per se and my strategy was to go to business school and then go to law school, be a business attorney, something like that. And then I remember placing a phone call to my cousin, and he told me don't go to law school. So
I don't know who that was. I
Right.
don't know who would have told you that.
Because he was so cold at U of I, and he was freezing walking to class. I just remember that very clearly.
I was like, can't do it. Can't do it. Don't do it.
So, that was my original plan. I knew I wanted to do something in business. Believe it or not, after my senior year, we were done playing basketball, and I walked into a bank, and I think it was the security guard was like, "Hey, do you need a job?" And I was like, "Actually, I do need one of those." I'm about to graduate, and then somebody told me don't go to law school, so now I don't know what I'm going to do. Long story short, that actually started my banking career, but the plan was, honestly, to still go to grad school at the same time. So those plans kind of merged, and as I learned more about the world of commercial banking, lots of stuff happened in between there, but I was honestly still focused on how do I place myself in this world that I want to be in. Learned a lot about commercial banking, managing clients, managing relationships, contrary to the plan. I learned a lot about me and what my passion was. And as I explored the world of banking, and before I left Milwaukee to get to Atlanta, which is where I am now, I dabbled in a lot within the commercial banking world. So when I made that first move, the plan was to rise within the commercial banking realm. And how do I keep moving down the line? You know, I think that plan was effective for the time, but then we moved to Atlanta and had children. And so then the plan kind of deterred a little bit. And now we're faced with traffic and the commute to Buckhead and, 2.5 hours in the car, and baby number 1 comes. Just got a little bit more sticky, then baby number 2 comes. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is kind of not the plan and it's not working. So we decided to take a step back, and I became a consultant and started doing some consulting, and that's kind of when Total Sanitizer was born, in my first break from banking. What I did realize is the consulting piece really helped me identify that I like to help people. I like the relationship management part of what I did. I started consulting with a company that made alcohol-free hand sanitizer, which is how I became aware of that strategy. So being the not sit on the hands person that I am, now I'm at home with 2 kids, and I'm like, hey, I should start a company. And then that's how Total Sanitizer was born. So once again,
like you weren't busy enough, right?
Yeah. I didn't have anything to do.
I gotta need some free time, right?
So I start dabbling in that world, and fast forward a little bit, baby number 3 comes, and I'm like, okay, the sanitizer thing is ebbing and flowing, right? It's a new world for me. I helped a lot of entrepreneurs, but didn't really know what it was like to be one. Learned that path as I went, and baby number 3 came, and I'm like, I need to go back to work. The sanitizer thing is great, but the plan was I wanted to get somewhere in banking, and that was kind of my professional career. This was kind of like a side job, that kept me busy. It kept me very busy, got involved with the community, et cetera, but my passion was relationship management and helping companies. So I went back to work, bottom line. But let's fast forward to that, because after baby number 3, I realized it was more difficult to be back in the professional world.
Right.
So I took a step back again and got them through kindergarten. And the plan was this time, after I can get them into school, all of them, they're only 2 years apart, so it was 6 years of new baby breastfeeding. It was like back and forth, but we knocked it out in 6 years. And then honestly, the plan was we are going to put ourselves in a stable position, and I'm going back to banking. And so that's exactly what happened. Fortunately enough, the bank that I'm with now saw some returning talent opportunities with me, because I had been out of the workforce technically for 4 or 5 years, but honestly, I was still running a company from home. It's a family business, so we all worked it together, but we decided like, hey, it's just going to be there, and I want to go back to banking. So that's kind of what happened. So I think the point was it was kind of the plan, but we had to adjust to what was happening, right? We always had this long-term goal that, entrepreneurial thing is in our family, so we're going to keep pursuing that. But, I still want to be happy with what I do. So the banking world kind of did that for me.
Gotcha. Talk to us a little bit about when you had to make these huge pivots, right? In terms of deciding, we're going to have baby 2, we're going to have baby 3. I'm going to walk away from, the baking world. Like, how did you, how did you and your husband sort of manage that? Like, how did you, like, not necessarily, well, how was that conversation, but like, what was some of the strategy going into?
Right, because I don't remember the conversation, but I think it was a strategy. So that totally makes sense, because all of a sudden baby number 3 was here, and I'm like, what, did we talk about this? So part of it was really about our long-term goals. So the strategy was about where do we want to be? We moved to the place we want to move to. I kind of left that out, but the relocation from Wisconsin to Georgia was a big deal for us.
It's another big transition.
Absolutely. And so that was part of the whole plan. It was a career opportunity in that plan, what it could do, the diversity, the professional diversity that's here cannot be matched anywhere else. So for me, on a sidebar, this is the first time I was at a higher level in a bank where I could meet with a client that looked like me. In all reality, in Wisconsin, they were all white males. So not even just my counterparts, but even actually, my clients. So that definitely put me in a different space. So that transition was actually big for us as we thought about how to be successful in our careers and what it would look like to move here. And fortunately, in my husband and what he does, it was the same thing for him. So we physically thought this was the right place. So this is where we're going to start the family, and this is kind of where we're gonna take it from here. So that was actually part of the plan. So that was probably the first big pivot that we made, was the relocation, because we were both doing really good in our careers, and we kind of like, this is not it for the long term. So when we did get here and got settled, everything started turning along, I would say, and then the children came. So that pivot was adjusted with the pause in my career, basically saying, you know what, we're going to have to take a minute, take a step back, because who knew what children were like until you had them? So, right? Like, you're right. Like, let's not pretend like we knew what that was going to be. I cannot even say, oh, I planned this perfectly. Like, no, it was kind of no, they are completely in control. But the pivot was for us to adjust to that situation, to say, like, okay, how do we do what we do? Fortunately, my husband, maintained his professional career. So that's what kind of kept us through my exploring of being an entrepreneur, and how can we make the sanitizer business work, the consulting business, while still managing and juggling these 3 children. So we financially, we had a plan, obviously. How long will this be able to happen? And then the strategy was, like we do today, at what point do we have to pivot to make another decision?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, and I hope our viewers can take away from this. I know Mike and I are exceedingly busy. We have the, a 9 to 5, our business, which just seems like a 9 to 5, and then kids, right? Which is a 24-hour day job, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, just hearing you, right? I think I just want our viewers to take away from that is, if you plan your life appropriately day to day, you can have it all. You can be an outstanding parent. You can have financial security while still chasing your dream to be an entrepreneur. And the reality is just balancing those things as they become important in your life. There are times where I'm sure, Ebony, you're like, hey, right now, Total Sanitizer needs my attention. So, girls, I need you guys to get with Quinn and just do this for a minute. And like, not to say that they're not important, but right now Total Sanitizer needs this, right? Or, hey, Bank of America is like the thing I gotta get done. And then we always know our kids are going to throw wrinkles into that, and we've got to be able to pivot and adjust to that. But I think you've done a really great job, if you look at your career and what you've accomplished, trying to balance all of those 3 things and giving them all the appropriate attention so that you're successful at each and every single one of those steps. Well, is there, and I would ask though, are there times, and I'm sure you're about to go here, where you feel like, gosh, what do you do in those times where you feel like you're being pulled in a certain direction and you're not giving one of those the time that you feel like you should, or not excelling at the rate that you could, or does that happen?
Right. And no, it definitely happens. Okay. But back to Mike's point about the pivoting, right? That's kind of what has had to happen since COVID. Total Sanitizer just is where it is. So, the attention that it gets, it doesn't have to have my hands all the time, fortunately, but we put that company in a position a year ago where it just, if we respond to something, that's fine. We've got multiple hands in that opportunity. But to your point,
really smart,
being the mother and being the Bank of America employee during COVID is kind of been the pivot, right? Like, how do we make sure the kids go to school and they're responding to their teachers at the same time I'm doing PPP loans for my clients? That's the interesting part, right? Because Bank of America, not only is your position unique, but during the pandemic, I mean, it got really busy. Real. Like it actually, it became real, right? And then your kids had to stay home from school, which became super real. And now those 2 seem like they're taking kind of the monster attention for you, right? Like that is just they are. Really, but really to your point, the way that I adjust is there's certain things that have to happen during certain times, and I'll be candid with you. When it doesn't happen that way, I don't freak out as much anymore. Now it's kind of like, we joked earlier, and I was like, hey, it's COVID. That's kind of the thing now. I've got this schedule, and I do what I have to do when I have to do it. And in reality, it has taught me that some of those deadlines are self-imposed, right? I'm the one who wants to make sure my kids pick up a foreign language during COVID. Nobody else cares about that. But it's like, Ebony, don't freak out if that doesn't happen. So it's things like that that's like,
They don't need to know French right now? Is that what you're telling me?
Okay, it's fine. right, it's fine. We can't travel anymore anyway.
They'll make it a year.
Right.
Yeah, they'll make it a year without that.
Yeah, so that's my point, is that's kind of the adjustment that I've made. It's definitely realizing certain things are more important than others, and COVID gave us that reality check. But not also those self-imposed deadlines and those self-imposed, like, you got to make sure you do this, and today. And, Fridays are just Fridays now. It's not like it used to be where it's like, okay, it's Friday's coming and now we have a weekend break. Now it's kind of like, we're going to get done what we can get done today and move on to the next day. So that's just my coping mechanism right now.
Yeah. Sure. What do things look like in the future for you in terms of, because it sounds like you all have a static plan around, focusing on your career and, you're done having kids. Well, I'm assuming
Absolutely.
You're done having kids.
Mike's like, I'd be done at 3.
No offense to everybody else, but listen, it's got to stop at some point. So for us, 3 is the magic number.
Yeah. So, I'm wondering, sort of from a future thinking standpoint, how do you continue to plan? How do you continue to strategize? Sort of, what does the next 5 years look like? What is, do you have a process for that? What does that? I don't know. What does that look like? Are you in that mode right now? Or,
so I feel like mentally, I'm always planning. My husband will tell you I'm a planner. I am not going to be the spontaneous, hey, let's do this tomorrow. And then I'm like, but what about next week? I'm the type of person that is a natural planner. And I feel like that leads to what people would call success, even though in my mind, I'm not done. I'm looking at it like there is always a plan. I prioritize my things that have to be important in my plan. And for us right now, it's, our professional careers, being a parent, education for our children. And so those are the kind of 3 things that if I said over the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, where are those things on the list? The education for the children is a big deal right now, right? Because of COVID and everything that's happening. So honestly, I'm glad that the professional side is just kind of humming along because we're super focused on the education piece right now. And what that looks like, and whether we have to change school districts or, whether we feel comfortable sending our children back to the classroom. That's our plan. But for 5 years, we have definitely, him and I have that conversation a lot. Like, where do we want to be? Everybody wants to retire early. What does that look like? And, if the business takes off, then what does that mean for us professionally? Do we want to stay living in Georgia? So we absolutely continue to have those conversations.
Gotcha. That's cool. So it sounds like you guys are having conversations and you're thinking about options and sort of what that might look like. And
variables, how many times we have to pivot,
Yeah.
Not to beat a dead horse, but...
Yeah, and I think that's...
Go ahead.
I think that's what's interesting and what I love about your career journey. I mean, I've had a front row seat to it, but the ability to pivot and adjust is something I look up to you for. Talk a little bit about that. How have you been able to pivot and adjust so quickly and get back on track in so many different ways?
I will tell you that in all reality, it might seem like I'm doing different things from the outside, but on the inside, I feel like as long as I stay in the relationship management world, that's what I'm doing. And even the pivot to the consulting, for me, it was about helping this client through this issue. I consider myself a problem solver. So whenever there is something that, not a problem in a negative sense, but just whatever the project is on the table, that's what I do. So I feel like as long as I'm passionate about that piece of it, the professional part doesn't feel like a pivot. Even when I decided to become an entrepreneur, that's kind of where it was. It was the people interaction. It was the working through problems, providing solutions, etc. Even whatever board I'm on or whatever committee I'm on at the time, I kind of feel like that's what kind of keeps me strategic and is this helpful for me right now, which I've done a better job of saying, okay, if I'm going to be on this committee, what am I bringing to the table? Can I help? And what am I getting out of it? So I don't look at it always like a pivot until we look back. And then it's like, oh yeah, that was different. And so I feel like I'm flexible enough that as long as I stay in my realm, I'm good, but I don't want to just be totally thrown off I don't even have an example, but that's kind of my point is I feel like I'm kind of trying to stay close to home base when I make a decision to make a change, whether it's professionally or anything that I'm doing from a volunteer perspective.
Yeah, I love.
I
Go ahead,
really
Mike.
like you mentioning.
Go ahead.
I really like you mentioning being flexible, which sort of aligns with being open-minded, aligns with sort of, being able to take risks and being vulnerable to what opportunities are. Because again, when you have a rigid mindset, like that can very much get in the way, and so.
I love that point because you're right. That's what I feel like is sometimes people say, Ebony, you're so open, you're all over the place. But I really don't feel like I'm all over the place. I just look at an opportunity and kind of assess it like, okay, does this kind of fit? And some people might say no. I probably say yes too much. But I feel like it's the flexibility that lets me do that.
There you go.
I really love the point about being focused on what you did and not where you did it, right? And I think sometimes those two things can get confused, right? Your passion is what you do, not who you do it for or who you do it with. And I think if you're listening to this audio, I think if you take that away from her story, is how am I fulfilling my passion in whatever I do is really an important takeaway, right? And sometimes the activity is the passion. For Hal being in theater, that's the passion, right? But I think for most of us who don't have a specific focus from an entrepreneurial standpoint or from a job standpoint, it's really about what is the thing that we're doing inside of that job that we can kind of take to future employment, whether that be for ourselves or anyone else.
To carry over.
I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I think that's really cool. So what type of lessons are you teaching your daughters today about, or do you focus on, I would say, to help them shape where their passion will be? Obviously, one of them is really, really young, and the other one is a little bit, your oldest is a little bit older, right? And she's starting to move into those conversations, about to go into middle school, which, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, right? But
I know.
About to go into middle school really soon,
Don't
right?
remind me.
And right, it's crazy, right? But have you started having those conversations with them about developing their passion or how to focus or what to focus on or anything around that?
So, they swear I'm always teaching and preaching. So, they just kind of look at me. They're like, what now? But Travis, obviously, my mom. That's where I got it from. Like, everything turns into like a learning moment. They're like, we just asked a question.
Shouts out Auntie Hope. Shouts out Auntie Hope.
Right.
A quick question turned into a 30-minute teaching moment. I appreciate it.
I try.
I appreciate it.
I kid you not. Sometimes they literally just say, Mommy, I'm going to ask you a question. Just say yes or no. I'm like, what are you telling me?
But you know what? That comes, my dad's the same way. And I think that just comes, our grandfather was like, times it by 10, right? But all of those lessons, man, like I employ all of that stuff today.
They knew what they were talking about.
Really good, Yeah, but at the time we was like, man, I just want to go play tag, dog. I just want to know, can I go over there or can I not? Like how'd this turn into like understanding where my body and where I gotta be? All
don't walk on my grass and like listen, walk down the sidewalk and listen. I just want to go play. Like that's it. But I totally get it now. I totally get it. Shouts out to our grandparents as well, right?
Yeah.
So wait, what was your question? Okay, so I do talk to them in general. At different levels, but obviously anybody that has multiple children know that the third one or the last one matures a lot faster. So we're actually all in these conversations together. I think fortunately enough, our parents gave us a lot of resources. And so I am definitely, everybody says, for example, are you forcing your daughter to play basketball? Absolutely not. Everybody knows I was a basketball player and I would love it if she did. But we talk about, I want you to play the things you like. You know what I mean? Like, now I do say you got to do something, but I'm going to let you pick. So I feel like that's another lesson. I'm like, I feel like we continue to impress on them, just not me, but obviously my husband too, continue to impress on them that this is about your personal well-being and your personal happiness. And I feel like in today's society, one of my takeaways would definitely be to speak and own your truth, but you got to figure out what that is, right? So don't let somebody else influence and like, oh, you're going to be a great basketball player. Maybe not. Maybe you like volleyball. In all reality, it's one of those things that maybe you don't even want to play a sport. She wants to be a dancer. That did not come from me, but if that's what you want, and that's what we try to encourage, it's one of those things that like, I think we're more encouraging them to figure out what they like now, and I'll help you translate that to something else. We joke around. I joke about the judge thing. I told Mackenzie I wanted to be a judge, and now she's watching judge shows like, I think I can do that. So she plays judge with her sisters. And, okay, who has an issue that I can talk about? So I think it's one of those that will flow into you figuring out your strategy and how you want to plan your future. And obviously we talk about college, but college might look very different 15 years from now than it does for us today. So I really just try to encourage them to understand who you are and what you like.
Yeah. I think that for parents out there who are like, man, how do I find time to take on my career goals and be the parent that I want to be? I think one of the things you talked about right there, which is really important, is how do I turn every opportunity into a teaching moment to help them grow into the person that they want to be? Versus like I've got to segment out all of this time, like, okay, this is my parenting time and this is my work time. And I think the reality is what parents do is it's fluid, right? And I know, Mike, we both know this. Our very first episode, you were working and parenting at the same time as we heard Cyrus in the background, right? I mean, that is life, right? And I think for those of you out there who are trying to look for that balance, find the balance in understanding that life and work can be intertwined to make your dream come true.
I think it has to be because honestly, that's part of my dream. My dream is not just to be, have some great job and a bunch of money and a big house and be in there by myself. So I think that's what you're saying is mixing the two together, like, or the 3 or the 10 or whatever it is. But how do you make it all come together in this pot? And somebody else taught me that because you're going to have to give on something, and don't feel like it's a failure because you have to give. We are our own worst critics. So it's one of those things that, like, this is how we have to live. I'm not saying anybody else has to live like this, but, we start school and then at noon, everybody meets back in the kitchen for lunchtime, right? For lunchtime, since they're all at school from home. But that's what we have to do. It's one of those things that we're adjusting to where we are now to kind of make this manageable for everybody.
Yeah, love it. So as we're kind of getting ready to wrap here, if there's 2-3 things that you can point to specifically that said, these are the things or traits that helped me be really, really successful and get to where I am today, and things that you may even be focusing on today, like I always focus on these things, what would they be?
So my first option is easy. I feel like I'm really flexible. I'm open to new ideas. I feel like I'm always looking at it like, how do I make the situation work versus that's not going to work? Whether it's anything from, something as simple as trying to accomplish 10 tasks in a day, or something like a career change. I'm looking at it like, how can I take this piece of it and learn from it? And as I mature, learning how not to overextend myself, knowing that I'm so flexible or so open and want to do all of these things. There's a lot on my plate. I just got to figure out how to organize my plate. I would think, so flexibility would definitely be one, but the other thing is realizing and accepting what your real truth is. Like, what is it that you actually want? If it's kudos that I want to be a stay-at-home mother or stay-at-home parent, stay-at-home dad, or I want to homeschool my children instead of going to work. Whatever it is, I think that's how you figure out how to plan a strategy that makes you happy in all reality.
Well, thank you, Ebony, for joining us. Please, if you go back, there were some great gems in here, especially if you're trying to balance, which I know a lot of us are focused on right now, is, man, the new reality through the pandemic and how to be a parent and all of that stuff together. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in here. So please check it out. Thank you so much. And Ebony, what's the website for Total Sanitizer if people are looking for a better sanitizer option than what they have right now?
It is totalsanitizer.com, TOTALSANITIZER. Totalsanitizer.com. Thanks for the plug.
Check it out. Check it out.
There you go.
Mike, nailed it again. Nailed it.
Thank you, guys are awesome.
Went through the net, killed it. Everybody, like, share, subscribe, comment. We want to create a community, so join us. And we'll talk to you next week. I actually think next week, Mike, is we're going to go live for everybody. So join our live.
That's right.
April 1st, 8 p.m. What time zone, Mike, though? Tell them what time zone it is, though. Pacific Standard. You know what I mean? You know.
I might be asleep. Are you recording it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But you wouldn't be live, so you might have to stay up. You know what I mean? Get your Twitter fingers right, you know. But join us. It's going to be LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Join us for our live April 1st. That will be our first episode to talk about our next topic, which is hustle and grind. So thanks for helping us close this out on strategy and planning, Ebony. We really appreciate it. And see you guys live next week.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.